Shin, a work-addicted young office worker, spends the whole night working on his project, even though his colleagues asked him not to stay up late at the office. Upon finishing, Shin decides to go back home, but a tragic accident catches him off guard, and he loses his life almost instantly. After this, it is revealed that Shin has reincarnated in another world as an 8-year-old boy. However, even though he remembers almost everything about his past life, he cannot remember how he died. Upon returning home, Shin is greeted by Merlin Wolford, his grandfather. When Shin was a baby, a group of demons attacked his family, and he was the only survivor, so the old man adopted and raised him. The young boy shows him the prey he caught during the afternoon, and the old man praises Shin's magical abilities, making it clear that the world Shin now lives in has no limits. After this, the story introduces Melida. We also meet the friendly Mr. Michelle. Melida Bowen is an old friend of Merlin's who visits Shin regularly. The old woman is outraged to see Merlin sending Shin to hunt, as he is only 8 years old, and such activities can be tragic. However, Merlin tells her that Shin's magical abilities have noticeably improved because of this, which is why Michael believes Shin's training should be even tougher. 2 years later, Merlin takes Shin demon hunting for the first time. To start, Merlin shows Shin how to detect all living beings around him. Additionally, Merlin warns his disciple not to get frustrated if he can't perform the spell on his first try, as it is high-level magic. To cast the spell, Shin must slightly extend his magical power around him. Surprisingly, Shin performs the magic search spell and does it much more effectively than Merlin. After this, Shin begins to feel a dark presence. Merlin explains that it was the magical power of a demon. To prevent tragedies, Shin tells his grandfather they must deal with the demon. Despite Merlin's warnings, Shin fearlessly confronts the demon, using a speed spell on his feet and another spell on his sword, moves that Merlin didn't know. Shin moves in an extraordinary way and defeats the demon in a single move. Seeing this, Merlin can't help but think about how much Shin has improved, so he takes the opportunity to congratulate him. Upon returning to the cabin, Merlin reveals to Melida and Michelle Shin's feat. In fact, the old man didn't even participate in the fight. Melida deduces that Shin comes from another world, as she has heard him recite spells in an unknown language. However, Merlin tells her that he wouldn't mind if that were the case. Merlin interrupts Shin and Michelle's training because the old man wants to confess to Shin that he is not his real grandfather. Obviously, the boy apologizes and tells him he already knew the truth. In fact, they both believe that the demon they fought earlier was the same one that attacked Shin's parents. Hearing Shin, Merlin realizes that he is a very mature boy, but Shin responds that none of it would have been possible without the presence of his 3 pillars. Merlin starts crying upon hearing this, but Shin sincerely thanks the old man for everything he did for him. 5 years later, Shin's loved ones gather to celebrate his 15th birthday, since in this world a 15-year-old is practically an adult. The king asks Shin about his dreams and aspirations, but the young man has no idea what he's going to do with his life, as he has only been in the forest practicing magic. Everyone is surprised to hear this, since Shin has never had responsibilities and has not learned how adults live, probably because Merlin never taught him these things. After this, Shin transports everyone to a magical training field, leaving everyone stunned, as no one knew he had this ability. Merlin realizes that Shin brought them all there to show them a devastating spell that he could only safely use in that place. Shin concentrates deeply to channel. After a moment, he manages to create a kind of blue gas in his hands, which grabs everyone's attention, as no mage has ever done this before. Shin combines this gas with fire and generates a large combustion, leaving everyone speechless. Obviously, this drives Melida crazy, so she scolds Merlin repeatedly, which leads Shin to explain that Merlin was just fulfilling his role as a teacher. Upon returning to the cabin, the group discusses Shin's future, as Merlin fears he may not be able to adapt to the world. In fact, Merlin believes that Shin could never go unnoticed in the world. Because of this, the king asks Shin if he would like to join the magic academy of his country, which angers Merlin greatly, as he believes the king only wants to use Shin. However, the king promises that he only wants to help Shin and has no selfish plans for him. As expected, this piques Shin's curiosity, so the king explains that it is a great opportunity to meet people his age. Upon hearing this, Merlin tells Shin that he won't interfere with his decisions, so the young man accepts the king's invitation. Dacium von Earlshide, king of the Earlshide kingdom, vows that Shin will be treated as an equal in the academy, since nobles do not receive special treatment. For the first time in his life, Shin realizes that all his loved ones are extremely important people. Even though he had never noticed it before, they also did not make an effort to stand out in front of him. In fact, at that precise moment, he realizes that even Michelle is a former commander. Realizing this, Melida scolds Merlin, as he never explained anything to Shin. The king reveals that Melida and Merlin were part of the high ranks of the army. In fact, they used to be a couple in the past, a revelation that leaves Shin speechless. After this, Shin travels to the capital with his grandparents. However, upon arrival, he realizes that a crowd welcomes them with great honor, as Melita and Merlin are literally the saviors of the city. After this, the group arrives at an incredible mansion, where a group of servants welcomes them with great servitude. Merlin tells his grandson to explore the city while they take care of preparing the place. However, Shin's walk is suddenly interrupted when he sees a waifu in distress. A group of bullies intimidates Shin, but he only provokes them by calling them cowards. When they try to attack, Shin defeats them in a single move. The waifu is stunned to see this and thanks him. Suddenly, another waifu appears, and now it is Shin who is dumbfounded. The waifus introduce themselves as Maria von Messina and Cicely von Claude. Both belong to the high nobility and are preparing for the entrance exams to the Magic Academy. Shin tells them that he is also trying to get into the academy, and both are stunned, as Shin's moves do not resemble those of a novice magician at all. Shin introduces himself with a handshake, and while Maria has no issue with it, Cicely blushes deeply. The waifus mention that the city's heroes have arrived, speaking of them as if they were celebrities. In fact, the rumor that the grandson of the national heroes will enter the academy has spread throughout the city. Shin leaves the place, and taking advantage of his departure, the waifus spend several minutes talking about him, as it's clear that Cicely has fallen for him at first sight, which surprises Maria. On exam day, Shin concentrates deeply, as he will get to see Cicely again if he passes. Suddenly, a rude student interrupts him disrespectfully, so Shin instinctively reacts. Arrogantly, the student threatens him by saying that he is none other than Kurt von Rietzberg, heir to Count Rietzberg. Obviously, Shin ignores this and introduces himself as Shin. Kurt threatens Shin, telling him that no one can do that to him without facing repercussions. At that moment, August von Erlsheid appears with a notable gleam, giving a speech about how authority cannot be used at school, as it's a law. August manages to make Kurt leave. August greets Shin and introduces himself. Shin, not understanding much, repeats his last name and exclaims that he is Uncle Dis's son. August laughs because they had never referred to him that way. Being the king's son, they had a lot of respect for him. Shin tells him that this makes them cousins. August laughs and agrees that they are cousins. Maria and Cicely are stunned to see Shin speaking so casually and closely with the prince, so they start to wonder who Shin really is. During the exam, Shin suffers a great disappointment, as his expectations were very high. His classmates have a much lower skill level compared to him. In fact, they recite spells like complete novices. When Shin's turn comes, the exam instructor freezes, as the king had warned her about Shin's incredible powers, so she asks Shin to limit himself when casting his spells. Everyone in the room is stunned by Shin's amazing abilities. In fact, all the instructors determine that Shin's performance was extremely outstanding, crowning Shin as the great revelation of the year. After this, Shin receives his uniform. However, after researching the topic, he decides to modify it slightly to feel more comfortable in it. Shin learns that he scored a perfect score, so now he has to give the speech to the new students. Shin refuses, as he prefers for a respected figure like August to handle it, but August tells him that tradition dictates that the most qualified student should welcome the newcomers. Although Shin didn't notice, Kurt literally despises him, as he missed entering Class S by just one spot. Besides having to go to Class A, Kurt has to deal with the idea of Shin giving the welcome speech. The next day, Shin gives the school speech in front of the entire school. In fact, thanks to this, Maria and Cicely discover that Shin is literally the grandson of the city's legendary heroes, as they hear that Shin's last name is Wolford. The next day, Shin keeps his promise and escorts Sizzling to school. The young people start their classes with a lot of enthusiasm. Alice, one of the waifus in the class, literally couldn't sleep all night imagining what the first day would be like. The class teacher takes the students on a tour of the school facilities, creating an incredible and enthusiastic atmosphere among the young people as they can explore all kinds of activities. The teacher explains the study group formats, and the whole class goes crazy because everyone wants to be part of Shin's group. Meanwhile, the royal knights and high-ranking royals face a very different reality, as the presence of demons has grown considerably. To everyone's surprise, evidence indicates that this plague did not occur randomly. On the other hand, Count Rietzberg takes a firm hand with his son, but is horrified to see that he is consumed by anger, hatred, and a thirst for revenge. Kurt is literally obsessed with the idea of exterminating Shin, whom he blames for everything bad that has happened in his life. The Count decides to lock Kurt in his room, as he doesn't understand Kurt's sudden behavior. The news of Kurt's punishment quickly reaches the ears of the academy students, so Shin begins to investigate more about Kurt's life. His classmates explain that Kurt didn't used to behave that way, but one of them reveals that Kurt changed considerably after meeting Professor Strum, a strange and eccentric substitute magic teacher who taught classes in the last year of high school. In fact, while the young people talk about this, Professor Strum interrogates Kurt's mother, who is desperate to help her son. However, as expected, Strum did not go there to help Kurt. In fact, he does the opposite. Strum uses magic to grow Kurt's hatred. The next day, the group continues to talk about what has happened with Kurt, and they conclude that Shin should no longer keep his promise to escort Sicilian to school, as the waifu will no longer suffer harassment. However, Sicilian pleads with them to leave the issue aside, once again making clear her feelings for Shin. Shin explains that he is able to use a spell to detect people's bad intentions. Furthermore, Shin reveals that he learned this style of magic to detect demons, which leaves all the students stunned, as Shin could protect the waifus from harassers with that spell. In fact, the group sees a demonstration of this spell just seconds later, as Shin manages to anticipate a devastating attack from Kurt, thanks to his detection magic. Shin and August realize that Kurt is possessed and out of control, as he attacked excessively and with clearly malicious intentions. Indeed, the young people are almost immediately witnesses to Kurt's deplorable state, who is literally surrounded by a demonic aura. Shin asks his classmates to leave the place, as they could get hurt, and although they fear for Shin's life, they immediately agree upon seeing the young man's incredible determination. When the fight starts, Shin quickly realizes that his life is in great danger, as the demon possessing Kurt only has in mind to end him, regardless of the consequences. In fact, Shin has no choice but to take drastic measures in the fight, as Kurt is channeling an absurd amount of magical energy in the place. To prevent a catastrophe, Shin uses his magic sword and ends Kurt's life. Shin's friends arrive at the battlefield seconds later and try to console Shin, as the young man cannot believe that he ended a human life. Days later, Shin is hailed as a hero, but he confesses that there is something dark behind Kurt's case, as there are too many suspicious clues regarding his sudden change. Then, upon arriving home, Shin learns that the royalty wants to award his exploits with a medal, which generates annoyance in Merlin and Melita, as the king had promised that he would not involve Shin in political matters. However, the king tells them that the recognition has nothing to do with politics, but that Shin literally became too popular among the citizens, and the whole world wants to know about him. Besides, he also gave them such an award in the past. The king agrees not to use Shin for political purposes, so the elders accept the deal. This causes a bit of insecurity for Sicilian, as Shin is literally the sensation of the moment among the waifus of the city. However, Shin tells her that she shouldn't worry at all, which comforts Sicilian. Meanwhile, the king meets with top security officials to explain what Shin revealed to him about Kurt. Then the authorities remember that Kurt received Strum the day before the confrontation, so they decide to go interview him. Upon arrival, one of them is curious about Strum's peculiar blindness. So the sorcerer reveals that he lost his eyes because of an absurd family feud among the nobility. After this, the detectives get down to business and ask the sorcerer about Kurt, but he tells them that he doesn't know what could have caused Kurt's tragedy. The inspectors not only believe Strum's words, but invite him to participate in the case as an investigator. The inspectors escort Strum to the city center with the promise to begin Kurt's autopsy, but Strum realizes almost immediately that the inspectors set him up, as the place is completely surrounded by the royal army. The inspector reveals that Kurt's case was not public knowledge, which made it obvious that Strum was involved. Hearing this, Strum tells them that his experiments have already concluded, so he is about to unleash a massacre on the place. At the same time, Shin's group suddenly encounters disaster as they were passing outside the site. Shin quickly lunges at Strum, as he immediately realizes that Strum could endanger his friends. After a brief exchange of attacks, Shin manages to unmask Strum, as by destroying his blindfolds, Strum's demonic eyes are exposed. Upon seeing this, Shin is dumbfounded, as he cannot believe that a demon is able to reason and camouflage himself among humans. Because of this, Shin rushes to attack Strum with light magic to drive him out of the place. Days later, when the tension in the city decreases, Melita interrogates Maria, as she is curious about Shin and Sicilian's relationship. The waifu explains to her that the two are obviously attracted to each other, but neither dares to confess how they feel. However, although everyone is unconcerned, Shin confesses to August that he fears what may come to pass in the coming days, as he knows that his attack was not strong enough to take down Strum. August takes Shin to the most famous blacksmith shop in town, as only Shin could take on Strum, and it is a duty of royalty to give him the appropriate weapons. Meanwhile, a strange messenger informs the king of the Blusvia Empire about the demonic invasion in Earlshide, so the king starts planning an attack. As if aware of all this, Shin takes his waifu to a luxurious accessory store, as he wants to keep the waifu protected using enchantments. In fact, Shin uses magic to enchant a ring and gives us one of the most kawaii moments in the anime. The next day, the kingdom holds the recognition ceremony, and Shin is dumbfounded, as he is literally honored by all the citizens. Also, to everyone's surprise, the king reveals the promise he made to Shin's grandparents, so Shin cannot interfere in political matters. This event causes citizens to literally line up outside Shin's house to get an autograph, so he has no choice but to use magic to open a teleportation portal. Shin's friends can't believe what they just saw, as they didn't even know that magic of that style existed. Because of this, Shin decides to organize an express class for his classmates, as they are unfamiliar with advanced spells, and Shin fears that something bad might happen. However, seeing that they are not able to keep up with the pace of the class, Shin decides to do some practical demonstrations for the youngsters to train every day. On the other hand, it is revealed that Strum and his henchmen are behind the political conflicts between Earlshide and Bluesfia. After class, Shin invites his friends to his house, as he wants Merlin to talk to them about learning magic. The old man notices that the young people are very motivated by Shin's teachings, but he also notices that they feel unable to put into practice what he is trying to teach, so he explains to them the secret that has helped Shin grow as a magician. Merlin explains that Shin thinks through each of the processes and mechanisms involved in his spells. Shin tries to understand how everything in the universe works, in order to try to replicate it when using magic. In fact, Merlin reveals that he was recently able to use Shin's teleportation magic thanks to the logic behind such a spell. The next day, Shin visits the blacksmith shop to fetch the asadas he had ordered, and on his way out, gives his friends some magical accessories to protect them. August confesses that a strong political conflict could break out soon, as there are rumors that Bluesfia wants to invade the kingdom. Obviously, August tells Shin that he will not allow him to take part in the conflict, but Shin tells him that he will not stand idly by if something bad should happen to his friends. Weeks later, the Emperor of Bluesfia receives one of his royal messengers and decides to withdraw the soldiers from the battlefield, as demons have begun to invade the empire. This news reaches the headquarters of Earlshide, so they decide to initiate a pursuit against the Bluesfia soldiers. However, the generals also receive the message that demons are attacking everywhere. Meanwhile, without the armies detecting them, Strom and Miria lead the demonic invasion from the shadows. In fact, as the days pass, Strom becomes more and more involved in political matters, as he strategically eliminates the high commands of each army. Due to this, the King of Earlshide decides to take action. The authorities of the Magic Academy reveal that, by order of the king, all students must prepare for the worst-case scenario, as the wizards prepare to defend the kingdom, and in turbulent times they must enlist in the army. Furthermore, the mages will have to conduct some training with the cavalry students. This upsets Shin's classmates a lot because, although he was not aware, there is a terrible relationship between both sides. The wizards do not perform any type of physical exercise in the academy, which is why they receive constant mockery from the knights. In fact, the night school students call the wizards sprouts because their heads are large but their bodies are thin. Obviously, the wizards call the knights muscleheads or similar names, further increasing the discord between the two groups. Shin tries to calm his classmates by saying they should complement both disciplines, but they tell him he shouldn't have an opinion since he is an incredible swordsman. Everyone is stunned to hear that Shin's instructor was none other than Michelle Calling, because although Shin doesn't know it, Michelle was the commander of the knights for almost his entire military career, due to his prodigious and unmatched sword technique. Days later, the students visit the capital's gate to organize an expedition against the demons outside the city. And as expected, the tension in the atmosphere quickly grows. On the way to the battlefield, the group meets Kreis, the squadron leader, and his subordinates Miranda, Noon, and Kent. Shin politely asks the knights if they have fought demons in the past, but they take Shin's comments very badly and begin to intimidate him, saying that mages are a hindrance to the knights. However, August intervenes and scolds the knights, telling them they have completely misunderstood the meaning of joint training. August reminds them that the kingdom is going through an unprecedented conflict, so they should not waste energy on pointless conflicts like these. In fact, August asks Shin not to intervene if a demon attacks the cavalry group, as he wants to show them that they are not capable of defeating a demon without the mage's help. Upon arriving at the battlefield, August explains to Shin that they were sent to the most remote place due to Shin's abilities, which is why they might see more demons than anywhere else. The group's advisors arrive at that moment, and everyone is stunned to learn that they will be accompanied by Sieg and Chris, as both are the king's escorts and hold one of the most privileged positions in the kingdom due to their incredible strength. However, This surprises Shin, as he had no idea about this. In fact, Shin sees Sieg and Chris as his older brothers. At the start of the expedition, August tries to explain the reason for his radical decision, but Sieg interrupts him, as he knows better than anyone the arrogant attitude of the night school students. In fact, both Sieg and Chris support August's initiative, as they are sure that a reality check is enough to bring them down a peg, and it's better for that to happen before they graduate. Sieg takes the opportunity to comfort and scold Maria, who feels bad for acting the same way as the knights. As the group ventures into the forest, the knights begin to show their fear of the unknown, which is no surprise to Chris, as the students have never fought a demon before. Suddenly, Shin's detection magic identifies the presence of a demon nearby, so Sieg orders the knights to be on guard. The demon appears almost immediately, and to everyone's surprise, it is a gigantic boar possessed by a lesser demon. Riddled with insecurities, the knights begin to attack but realize immediately that they are no match for a demon, which completely shatters Chris's morale. Fortunately for them, Shin intervenes virtuously and defeats the demon with a single thrust, leaving the knights stunned, as they cannot believe that a Magic Academy student can wield a sword like that. Obviously, Sieg and Chris seize the opportunity to teach the immature night school students a lesson. Sicilian rushes to heal the knights' wounds, which sparks an unexpected infatuation from the knights, as they see the waifu from an enviable perspective. Obviously, Shin goes crazy seeing this. The knights spend the rest of the day serving Sicilian down to the smallest detail, and cannot take their eyes off her. Shin is about to explode with jealousy, but doesn't want to say anything to make his feelings obvious. Obviously, August notices Shin's attitude and teases him. Maria suddenly appears and shows that Shin is not the only one feeling jealous, as she also wants the guys to pay attention to her. In fact, Miranda feels the same way. Sieg orders the group to stop wasting time, and at that precise moment, Shin realizes that a huge number of demons are heading towards them. In fact, the group receives a visit from 2 sentinels who confirm an exact count of 100 demons, which terrifies everyone. Shin asks Sieg to let him handle the situation, a request that Sieg readily approves. After this, Chris orders the rest of the students not to interfere, so Shin takes the initiative and positions himself at the forefront of the battlefield. Upon seeing the wave of demons, Shin channels the spell he used at the beginning and leaves everyone stunned, as despite one of the demons being of catastrophic level, Shin disintegrates them. After this, Miranda approaches Shin to apologize, as she has realized that she has acted this way solely out of envy. She also apologizes to Sicilian for misjudging her boyfriend, which blushes both of them. The next morning, Merlin assists the young ones with efficient control of magical energy, as improper magic flow can cause unnecessary physical strain. On the other hand, Melita teaches them how to enchant objects, as she is literally the best teacher the group could have in these magical arts. As expected, Shin maximizes the newly acquired skills of the team with his practical lessons. However, Shin realizes that he has neglected his own training lately, and is unsure if his current power is enough to face the leaders of the demonic clan. To help their master, the youngsters use all their strength to channel a super magical barrier capable of withstanding Shin's attacks. However, he insists time and again that it's not necessary, since he won't harm them at all. Shin begins to channel his attack and leaves everyone speechless, as he seems to have enough power to destroy the world with an attack of such magnitude. Obviously, Shin redirects the attack elsewhere, though it causes an unprecedented catastrophe in the area, provoking the fury of almost everyone. After finishing the training, August asks Shin to take him to the castle, as he wishes to obtain precise information on the whereabouts of the demons. Upon arriving at the castle, August is immediately confronted by a waifu named Ellie, leaving Shin stunned, as no one would speak to the prince in such a manner. Due to this, August has no choice but to confess to Shin that Ellie is his fiancée. The waifu introduces herself formally and respectfully, as Shin is literally a hero to the nation, besides being the grandson of Melita and Merlin. However, as soon as she finishes introducing herself, she begins to scold August vigorously for going to the camp. May, August's younger sister, bursts into the room and also begins to scold the prince, as she is a deep admirer of Melita, and August didn't allow her to go to the camp to meet her. Upon seeing Shin, the lowly introduces herself as a great admirer of Melita. Ellie tells August that they will forgive him if he takes them to the camp, a proposal that August flatly rejects. However, his father ends up convincing him, and August agrees to take the waifus. Upon arrival, Shin receives the most unexpected news of all, as he believed Ellie wanted to be close to August, out of jealousy of the other girls. She confesses that Shin is the person who provokes the most jealousy in her due to August, constantly talking about him 24/7. In fact, the waifu completely loses it every time she remembers him. which is why August explains to her that she has nothing to worry about since he had never had a friend like Shin before. Furthermore, to further reassure Ellie, August reveals that Shin is already in a relationship, leaving the young wizard stunned. August tells Shin that it's time to take the next step with Sicilian, since he has the perfect setting to do so. Shin tells him that nothing guarantees success, as it's likely his feelings are not reciprocated. Obviously, August tells him that it's exceedingly obvious what Sicilian feels for him. After this, August presents the waifus to the group and asks Sicilian to please include them in the guest list. Shin arrives at the scene moments later, and upon seeing his attitude, Ellie understands the conversation that August and Shin had in the previous scene, which greatly embarrasses the young wizard. Later, August takes Ellie and May to introduce them to Melita and Merlin. Obviously, May gets extremely nervous upon seeing Melita, as she had spent her whole life wanting to meet the legendary guru. The lowly asks Melita for permission to hold her hands, which causes great tenderness in the elderly woman, as many years have passed since Shin asked her for something like that. This triggers a lot of teasing in the place, as everyone begins to say that only Melita and Merlin could have raised a child like Shin, making it clear that she's the ultimate waifu. Sicilian stops the teasing in the most tender and explicit way of all, as she literally says that she would love to have children who resemble Shin. Obviously, Sicilian almost immediately realizes that her feelings were evident, so she runs out of the place. Obviously, August tells Shin to seize the moment to talk to Sicilian. Shin goes after Sicilian and finds her sitting in the ideal spot, just a few meters from the house. Although both are nervous and anxious, they manage to calm down little by little. Shin asks Sicilian if she remembers everything that happened the day they met, and the waifu details it with millimeter precision, which makes Shin even more embarrassed. He takes advantage of the waifu's memory to remind her that he was stunned when he saw her, as he found her to be the most beautiful woman in the world. The waifu confesses that she felt exactly the same, so they both finally reveal their feelings and stop beating around the bush. Shin looks at her intently and tells her the magic words, but when they were about to kiss, literally everyone appears in the place, as they were hiding nearby, eagerly waiting. The next day, Shin organizes a strange and innovative training session on the beach. The whole group is anxious and confused in equal proportions, as they don't see how a beach volleyball tournament can be useful. Shin explains that the ball is enchanted, and they can hit it only using magic, but they must do so in a controlled manner. When the game starts, Shin realizes that everyone is extremely competitive, as they literally risk their lives with each point. The young ones spend the whole afternoon training and having fun, as the match is extremely close and entertaining. At night, the group organizes a pajama party and spends the whole night talking. August reveals that he fell in love with Ellie when he was young, as she was the only one who didn't try to flirt with him for being the king's son. In fact, Ellie completely ignored him. Both have a romantic moment, which makes all the waifus in the place blush, as they also want to feel loved. Shin feels that Melita is lurking nearby, so everyone hides, and when the old woman enters the place, everyone pretends. However, Shin and Sicilian accidentally ruin everything, and the old woman scolds the whole group. Shin and Sicilian meet in the hallway the next morning, so the waifu asks Shin to introduce himself to her parents. Shin agrees without any issues, thinking it would be straightforward. Although he gets extremely nervous at first, he manages to calm down and everything goes well, as Sicilian's father becomes incredibly joyful, further relaxing Shin. However, Sicilian's mother acts a bit differently, believing it's right for them to venture into a courtship without thinking of marriage. Due to this, Shin agrees to take Sicilian as his fiancé, which fills the waifu with happiness. After this, the group heads to the training field to continue with the intensive combat sessions. Ellie and May are left speechless seeing the training, as they have never seen mages with such power. Merlin approaches them and kindly asks if they would like to learn some magic, and although Ellie shyly declines the offer, May agrees and leaves everyone stunned, demonstrating great potential. Then, Shin shows the group the spell he has been working on lately, which consists of removing the gravitational properties from an object to make it float. However, that's not all, as Shin can use this spell on himself to fly, literally leaving everyone in awe. Although Shin would love to teach this spell to his comrades, he'd need to explain several things first, as it combines various spells to enable flight. Furthermore, Shin reveals he created this spell because Strom is capable of flying, as demonstrated in their fight. During break time, Shin and Sicilian explain to Melita and Merlin what happened that morning, as although they have no regrets about the decision they made, they hadn't planned on getting engaged so quickly. Neither of Shin's grandparents opposes the engagement. On the contrary, they show strong support for the relationship. However, Melita kindly asks Sicilian to let her meet her parents as soon as possible, as she needs to discuss something important with them. Upon arriving at the Claude mansion, the elders reveal that Shin is not actually their grandson, as they have no blood relation or connection. Melita apologizes to Sicilian's parents for this, believing Shin was only accepted because he's the grandson of the two biggest celebrities in the kingdom. However, the Claude parents demonstrate they don't care about that at all, as Shin is an excellent person, and their feelings for Sicilian are genuine. Furthermore, the waifu is madly in love with him. Days later, Shin gives new outfits to his companions for when the decisive moment approaches. Obviously, Shin enchanted each outfit with all kinds of spells. Moreover, Shin decides to organize a special combat training on that same day to test the outfits. However, when the group was about to leave, Mei starts causing a commotion, so Shin has no choice but to create a kind of magical walkie-talkie so that Mei can communicate with them even when they are far away. Unfortunately, the plan doesn't go as Shin planned, as Melita discovers the artifact and gets furious, as she can't believe Shin created something like that on the spot, while she spent her entire life trying to create similar things. Shin leaves the communicator at home, and the group quickly sneaks out. Upon arriving at the training field, Shin decides it's time to switch roles in the group, so he asks the support squad members to take care of the fiercest demons, since it's necessary for them to learn to be on the front lines if the situation calls for it. Julius, Yuri, Mark, Sicilian, and Olivia trust Shin's orders completely, and although they feel a bit afraid, they completely destroy an S-class demon. Furthermore, Shin concludes that if the support group members can defeat an S-class demon together, the attack group members should be able to defeat an S-class demon individually. Indeed, Shin's prediction is correct, as the youngsters manage to do it without any problems. However, August reminds Shin that he is about to face the biggest challenge of his life, and he's not wrong at all, as Shin is literally trembling the next day, while preparing for his engagement ceremony with Sicilian. As if that wasn't enough, the waifu unexpectedly enters Shin's room, and he becomes mesmerized by her beauty. Shin and Sicilian publicly celebrate their engagement. The guests are moved to tears, so the king quickly publicly declares the engagement and starts the celebration. Shin and Sicilian momentarily leave the party to have a private moment, so Shin takes the opportunity to give Sicilian a ring, gifting us one of the most tender moments in the anime. The next day, Shin starts a new type of training. The group can't believe that thanks to the new magic Shin developed, they are able to fly. In fact, Shin is pleasantly surprised by how well they do. On the other hand, we finally hear news from Strom and his followers. Strom's coldly calculated strategies were ruthless, as he managed to completely overthrow the empire he had targeted using social engineering. Strom effectively filled the common people with hatred and resentment, as while they suffered the ravages of invasions, the nobility continued to live a luxurious and carefree life. In fact, Strom manages to create an army of demonoids thanks to this hatred and resentment, much like he did with Kurt in the past. However, Strom no longer has any reason to continue his plan, as his sole purpose in life was to destroy the empire, and he has no interest in attacking or invading other places. Although his army begs him to invade other nations, he tells them they are completely free to pursue their goals. After this, the demonoids literally begin to leave the area, leaving Strom's followers questioning his past. Due to this, Strom decides to share the story of his life. In the past, Oliver Strom was known as Oliveira von Stradius, a noble who was extremely just and hardworking. Oliveira was loved by all the commoners, as he worked tirelessly to improve their quality of life. In fact, Oliveira would spend the entire afternoon overseeing the fields, as he had implemented several agricultural reforms to increase production. The reforms were successful. So many commoners from other kingdoms left their homes to live on Oliveira's lands. A flashback reveals that, during his youth, Strom visited the kingdom of Earlshide and fell madly in love with the nation, as there were no injustices or abuses towards the citizens. This completely changed Strom's personality, who had never questioned the classist behaviors of the nobility. Oliveira would even work late into the night in his palace, as he personally took care of the county's accounts. Arya, his wife, felt deep admiration for Oliveira's actions, as she knew better than anyone else the efforts the Duke made to improve the world. However, while Oliveira dedicated his life to improving the commoners' quality of life, nobles from nearby districts were busy devising strategies to overthrow him, as the emperor respected Oliveira above any other noble. In fact, the nobles carried out the coldest, most Machiavellian and horrifying plan ever seen in an anime. Firstly, they took advantage of Oliveira traveling to the capital to meet with the king and began spreading lies about him, bribing the police to tarnish his reputation. The police denounced Oliveira throughout the county, linking him to horrible crimes. They even went as far as staging a fake scene to make the lie more believable. This enraged the commoners, who felt Oliveira had used them vilely and ruthlessly. The commoners swore vengeance against Oliveira and took his wife's life. When Oliveira arrived at the scene, it was already too late. Arya had lost her life in the most sadistic and depressing way. The mob began to insult Oliveira and accuse him, so he immediately understands the whole situation and becomes furious. Oliveira explains each inconsistency in the evidence the police planted, so the mob begins to apologize to him. Obviously, Oliveira finds this distasteful, so his feelings of hatred and revenge take over. Oliveira becomes demonized and completely destroys the place. From that moment on, Oliveira Strom vowed revenge on the Empire and dedicated every minute of his life to ending Blusvia. The story returns to the present, minutes after hearing Strom's story. Zest and Lawrence roam the palace while discussing the tragedy unleashed by Strom's power, and realize he needs a new goal to keep his ambition alive, as he has already achieved his revenge against the Blusvia Empire. Zest asks Lawrence to gather the demonoids to organize an attack on the Kingdom of Swede, a nation close to Earlshide. Zest's plan is to get Shin's attention, as he wants him to face Strom. Days later, August is officially presented as the Prince of the Kingdom of Earlshide. However, a soldier abruptly interrupts the ceremony to notify the king about the situation in the Kingdom of Swede. Fear grips all the citizens, as the soldier lacked any discretion when sharing the news. August takes the floor and reassures all the citizens. Furthermore, he introduces Shin as the hero and master of an entire specialized group of mages who can combat any type of threat. The people regain hope and celebrate August's words, cheering for Shin with shouts and applause. Meanwhile, the Kingdom of Swede prepares to face a massive horde of demons, so the army decides to evacuate the citizens as quickly as possible. The commander of Swede even sends a messenger to Earlshide to ask for their help. Additionally, the magical team works together to protect the city walls, as that's where the demons primarily attack to enter a city. However, it's evident that the demons manage to enter regardless, as the special group from the Magic Academy witnesses the havoc the demons have wreaked upon the Kingdom of Swede. A woman does her best to escape with her son, while the demons only toy with her in a humiliating manner. Fortunately, just as they were about to strike the final blow, Shin and Thor arrive suddenly and handle the situation. The young mages introduce themselves as reinforcements from the Kingdom of Earlshide, filling the woman with joy and hope. Shin greets the child and feels empathy, understanding the gravity of the situation. August takes this opportunity to announce to the entire Kingdom of Swede that they have taken the use of magic to the next level, so they will be able to face the demons without any problems. Furthermore, he announces that the leader of the special group is Shin Wolford, whom the demons know as the young man who expelled Strom. The citizens of Swede rejoice greatly as they have regained hope. Shin quickly organizes the squad to expel the demons but prioritizes the wounded, asking Sicilian to set up a relief station. However, the entire scene is being closely observed by an enemy. Two of the team's waifus venture into the city using detection magic, and when they detect a demon, they immediately rush towards it. The demon underestimates them, seeing them only as immature little girls. However, the demon is humiliated in the most embarrassing way possible, as Lin literally disintegrates it, leaving no trace behind. The situation repeats itself just an instant later, and the waifus show they are on another level. Seeing a demon humiliatingly mistreat a security guard, they are infuriated, as the demons are fully aware of what they are doing, so the waifus don't see them as humanoids and have absolutely no empathy for them. The demon once again underestimates the waifus and gets a massive humiliation in return. After this, the waifus try to assist the Swede soldier, but he only thanks them and leaves the area with great effort. This greatly excites the waifus, making them feel unstoppable. On the other hand, Thor and Julius face another group of demons, which are extremely agile and powerful. Thor takes the opportunity to interrogate one of the demons, asking if they are under Strom's orders. However, the demon completely ignores the question and continues fighting despite the significant power difference. Seeing the demon's attire, Thor realizes that this demon used to be a commoner. The demon explains that he obsessively hates humans, believing the nobility is responsible for everything that happened in his life. Thor tries to convince him that his hatred led him to attack people unrelated to the nobility, so his argument makes no sense. Meanwhile, Shin and Yuri deal with a small demon camp trying to penetrate the city. On the other hand, a cunning group of demons tries to assault Sicilian's relief station, but Shin had already anticipated this, so Mark and Olivia epically deal with the demons. Sicilian focuses all her efforts on healing the wounded, but finds herself needing to ask for patience, as she wants to prioritize those who are severely injured. Shin continues to massacre the demons, so they start feeling they are no match for him. Their egocentrism and arrogance slowly begin to crumble, while Shin keeps wiping out the camps as if he feels no fatigue. One of the demon leaders has a brilliant plan: to devastate the prince. August realizes this and decides to fight since, if he manages to defeat one of the leaders, the group's morale will drop even further. The demon replies that it's a great plan because he intends to do exactly the same. The demon carries out a surprise attack, putting Maria in a tight spot, who was unable to foresee the attack. Fortunately, the enchantments on her outfit completely absorbed the severe damage the waifu could have suffered. After this, the waifu unleashes a devastating attack against the demon, but fails to do any damage. Obviously, this surprises both mages greatly, as they can't believe the demon survived such an attack. However, they immediately realize the demon possesses an enchanted object he stole from some conquest. The young mages agree to relentlessly attack the object, as the demon doesn't possess enough magical concentration to keep the object functioning for long. Indeed, after a brief reign of attacks, the mages managed to defeat the demon. Just as August had suspected, the defeat of one of the bosses would affect the demon's morale, as the demons outside the city decide to turn around and abort the mission. Lawrence and Zest can't believe their plan failed, as they didn't expect Shin to empower his teammates so much. However, although Zest had already resigned himself to the conquest, Miria decides to enter the scene to confront Shin. However, most of the wizards are not even aware of this. In fact, Sicilian remains deeply focused on healing the wounded, who are extremely demanding. Miria starts wreaking havoc, and Shin senses her presence immediately. However, the first to confront Miria is not Shin. Alice and Lin protect a group of soldiers, as the demoness continues causing chaos. Alice tries to surprise Miria, but she demonstrates that her speed and combat ability are far superior to anything the waifu knows, managing to dodge and counterattack virtuously. In fact, Miria captures Alice, putting the waifus in check. All this is possible because Zest effectively distracts Shin, using the demonoids as pawns. The rest of the group notices what's happening, and quickly organize to assist Alice and Lin, who are in a very unfavorable position. The young ones do their best to stop Miria, but she manages to perfectly sabotage each of the group's efforts. Obviously, the youngsters start feeling desperate, as no demon had shown such an incredible combat level. Fortunately, Shin arrives before things worsen. Seeing him, Miria gets very excited, as she couldn't wait to face the world's most famous wizard. However, Miria's enthusiasm crumbles almost immediately, as Shin attacks her with great ferocity and determination. The demoness manages to dodge Shin's attack just in time, suffering only a minor injury. Nonetheless, just 5 seconds of combat gave Miria enough information to understand that Shin is on another level, so she decides to leave the battlefield. Obviously, the demons need to devise a sophisticated plan to escape from Shin, so they use their friends as bait, as Shin would prioritize them over anything else. The young ones apologize to Shin, as they almost ruined everything. Shin explains that this demoness was on another level, so they shouldn't worry about it. August starts drawing conclusions from the attack, as they used a rather strange procedure. In fact, Shin has the same suspicions, as it's very unusual for Strum not to be present. Their suspicions make some sense minutes later, as it's revealed that Strum had observed everything from the shadows without his henchmen knowing, making it clear that he had nothing to do with the attack. The group focuses on the relief station, where Sicilian has been since they arrived. Shin hurries to help his waifu, as she is completely exhausted. Moreover, the situation has deeply affected Sicilian emotionally, as she has seen too many people with traumatic injuries. Shin relieves Sicilian, as the waifu has almost completely depleted her power reserves to save a man who was on the brink of death. After a moment, Shin manages to stabilize the man, which greatly relieves his wife. However, Sicilian confesses that she feels very frustrated, as she used literally all her strength to save that man and still couldn't do it. Shin comforts her in the most logical way possible, reminding her of all the people who were saved thanks to her efforts. Shin reminds her that she didn't rest for a second, and that thanks to her, the people of the Kingdom of Swede will be able to keep living. After this, the special group meets with the King of Swede, as August plans to offer his help to fight future demon attacks. In fact, August confesses to the king his suspicions about the demon clan, as there may be certain differences between the clan leaders. August proposes a formal alliance to the king, leaving everyone in the room speechless, as nations tend to be extremely selfish and bureaucratic when forming alliances. However, the king thanks August and says he will discuss it with his advisors. After this, Shin tells August that everything would have been easier if Shib had been able to use his magic portals. So August says they will have to travel through all the kingdoms, so Shin can recognize all the places and use portals without problems. August urgently meets with his father, as he wants to explain his plan. August's father immediately agrees. In fact, he grants August the authority to negotiate in all nations as an ambassador of the highest level. Ellie and May get angry hearing this, as they also want to participate in the journey. Obviously, August refuses, but they all agree to plot against him. In fact, Thor and Julius commit to personally taking care of the waifus. Meanwhile, in the demon realm, Strom slightly scolds his subordinates, as they mobilized without any authorization. However, The combat has ignited Strom's desire to fight, as he has seen what Shin and his group are capable of. This slightly confuses the demons, although they know they can now count on Strom for the next invasions. Before leaving the place, Strom asks Miria if there are any updates on the experiment, hinting that Miria is pregnant. The season ends this way, with the special magical group leaving the kingdom of Earlshide to help all nearby kingdoms. The young ones are literally the hope of the world, as the demons have proven to be extremely superior to any other human army. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get new anime recaps.